John, we can't hear you. You're muted. John, we can't hear you.
Yes, I know. It's when you share the screen, if you don't tell it to not do the sound, then you're messed up. Okay, share tab audio. Okay, now you should actually hear me. Is that true?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, so, and if you're not me, please mute your line because we're getting a bit of traffic background and typing background noises. So if you could all kindly mute except when you're talking, that would be wonderful. So thank you all for joining this call. We are focusing on the link between community-led development and ending world hunger. Because we are heading into World Hunger Day, which is a social media campaign that is happening this Saturday to focus world attention on the work of achieving zero hunger, SDG 2. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to the movement. I think most of us on this call today are familiar with the movement, but a few are probably here for the first time. Then after the brief introduction, I'll give a very brief plug for World Hunger Day and let you know how to participate. We're going to then go briefly through a bit of research on the causal links between community-led development and ending hunger. I'll introduce our special guest and my longtime friend, Asma Latif, who is part of the SDG2 Advocacy Hub and has recently launched a new consensus on small-scale farmers. We'll hear updates from around the world and upcoming events, and that'll be our agenda. And Sarah, if you can figure out who the traffic noise is coming from and ask them to mute, that'd be wonderful. So our movement was launched alongside the Sustainable Development Goals back in 2015, because it was our contention that the only possible pathway for achieving those goals is to shift the power to local communities. The movement comprises 1,500 local civil society organizations, 70 plus international NGOs. We have 17 national chapters, and we are all working to shift resources and authority to local communities. We have 5 goals. The first is to guarantee voice and agency for women, youth, and marginalized groups in the decisions that affect their lives. A devolution of national budgets so that at least 20% of national budgets is reaching local communities. We want there to be good local governance in communities, namely democratic elections and social accountability and transparency. With those in place, there should be the fundamental human right of people having equal access to quality public services and the skills and resources that communities need to achieve resilience in the face of shocks such as climate change and conflicts. We have this theory of change that really puts our national chapters in the forefront of action through forming partnerships to advocate with their governments, to decentralize power and devolve resources, and also partnerships to facilitate community-led development, to mobilize communities at larger and larger scale. And if those could converge, community mobilization and decentralization of resources and authority, we believe that is what will achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We also have a global secretariat and some working groups to provide evidence for that kind of advocacy, and also best practices and capacity strengthening for everyone in the movement. So recently, this has become a much larger issue. The USAID and the other big donors are increasingly committed to localization and to community-led development. So on our website, we have recently done a paper to try to clarify those terms, because people have been mashing them up and confusing them. Locally led isn't the same as community led. Decolonizing isn't the same as both of those. So if you run into people who are confused about all these localization terms, we now have a piece on our website to try and clarify that. Now, World Hunger Day was started 11 years ago by the Hunger Project in the UK to focus attention on the work of achieving zero hunger. This year, the theme is the role of youth in ending hunger. If you go to our website /WHD for World Hunger Day, you will see access to social media toolkits and other ways to get involved. But everybody in the world is most welcome to join this social media campaign, which will be this Saturday. Now, the theme of today is the role of community-led development in achieving zero hunger. And right now, all of us, our brothers and sisters around the world, are facing another food price crisis because of the war in Ukraine. The World Food Program has said that the failure to open the Black Sea ports, where so much of the world's wheat comes from, is a declaration of war on global food security. And this kind of dependency on grain trade is a story that we've experienced before. On May 5th in 2008, there were food riots in Somalia, in Haiti, in countries around the world because of food price crisis in that year. That food price crisis triggered all kinds of international focus on issues of food security. The G8 summit in 2009 committed to reverse the steady decline in aid to agriculture and food security. The US committed to double its commitment to aid to agriculture, and the whole G8 and then the G20 really put a big focus on improving the situation around food production. But a lot of us who were at those meetings in 2008, 2009 said, look, the issue is not just food production. The world produces enough food. The issue is more complex. It's nutrition. And so in 2008, and then again in 2013, there were big scientific studies rolled out to come to a new understanding of what it would take to improve the lives of hungry people. The Scaling Up Nutrition movement was launched, and I know a lot of people on this call are directly involved in the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. Asma, who you'll hear from shortly, was in a leadership role on the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. And then the Lancet series did these two big releases of papers to really analyze. Now, this is a very small print. A lot of you won't be able to read it on your screen right now, but I'm going to go through each piece of it, because one of the things that the Lancet studies really focused on, first of all, was the 1,000-day window. That if you're going to prioritize action to end hunger, you really need to focus on adolescent girls and on mothers, because malnutrition, undernutrition in the first 2 years of a child's life can be permanently debilitating, can cause stunting and wasting that has a lifetime of impact. So focusing on women before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and in their first 2 years, the child's first 2 years of life, is the most important priority in ending hunger. And to do that requires a whole lot of things to come together. Nutrition-specific interventions and programs, nutrition-sensitive programs and approaches, and a real enabling environment. And these are all things that we have seen that community-led development is crucial to work on. So we did this paper, and you can, at the Hunger Project, and you can find it at bit.ly CLD Hunger, where we look at all of those Lancet points, the 19 interventions, the 7 steps to enabling environment. And what we saw was that really almost all of those require community-led action if they're going to be achieved. So if you look at the first steps, which are building an enabling environment for ending hunger, the Lancet series points out 7 things that really each require community level action. Rigorous evaluations, advocacy strategies, horizontal and vertical coordination, because all of these interventions need to come together in the same community. I mean, you need health care, you need to halt child marriage, you need clean water and sanitation, you need access to nutrition and food, and all those have to happen in the same communities. There needs to be accountability, incentives, regulations, and legislation. There needs to be leadership programs, which a lot of the programs that you all lead are focused on. There need to be investments in local capacity and domestic resource mobilization that is increasingly a big part of the movement's work. So if you have comments or questions as we go through all these things, I really invite you to use the raise hand feature. Now, I'm doing the slides. I can't actually see the raise hand feature, but Gunjan or Sarah can call on you and you can unmute and ask your question or make your comment as we go along. Okay, the second set of interventions are called nutrition-sensitive programs and approaches. These things are not directly feeding people, directly improving people's nutrition, but they are, if you don't do these things, you will have malnutrition. For instance, if you don't have agriculture and food security, that will lead to malnutrition, undernutrition. If you don't have social safety nets, and if those social safety nets aren't accountable to the local people, if there's not early childhood development, maternal mental health, postpartum depression is a real thing, and it can lead to malnutrition among both mothers and their children. Women's empowerment, if girls are getting married off as at too young an age, they will not have well-nourished children. Child protection, classroom education, so that people know what to eat. Water and sanitation. In South Asia, recent studies have shown that 1/3 to 1/2 of all of the high rates of childhood malnutrition in South Asia are a direct consequence of open defecation and lack of proper water and sanitation. Access to health and family planning services are really key And I know in the Hunger Project programs, we've seen that the prenatal visits by mothers are really essential for her to understand nutrition. I was in Ghana just at a health center last, I guess, a week and a half ago. And when the mothers were asked what did they learn during their prenatal checks, it was all about nutrition. And then nutrition-specific interventions. So, the kinds of adolescent and maternal dietary supplements, vitamin A and folic acid, make a huge difference in the health and nutrition of mothers and their children. The proper breastfeeding and complementary feeding is a key step. I know our volunteers in Bangladesh have been using the Essential Nutrition Action education for adolescent girls and women and whole families. And when these ENA workshops, when they first started doing them for the 1,000-day window, I asked the team there how it was going. Were they getting lots of participation in these workshops? And they said they couldn't keep up with the demand. Mothers and adolescent girls really wanted this kind of education because, breastfeeding seems perfectly natural, but there are education required to do it properly to ensure that as it says here in number 7, that babies are properly stimulated to nurse fully. Treatment, community-based treatment of severe acute malnutrition is something that has really been spread through the core group and others. Disease prevention, which can really ruin nutrition, particularly waterborne, but other diseases. And then being able for communities to be equipped to intervene in emergencies. So all of those things need to come together. And I just wanted to pause, and because a lot of the folks on this call are frankly experts in this, and I'd love to hear your comments on community-led action in all of these interventions. So who has a comment that they would like to make or a question they'd like to raise? Anyone? Just unmute and speak up. Okay, if you don't speak, I will start calling on you. Good, Dr. Dali.
Yes, nutrition, especially affecting mothers and children and all this is very, very serious. In only one local government, when we had a pilot project there, we discovered that thousands of children were malnourished, and their mothers were really suffering because no food, proper food to feed the children, and the husband cannot afford because of the destruction during the crisis, and so they are vulnerable, and that is what led to their malnourished. Even the mother that don't have milk, her breast cannot produce milk. So this is really very, very important. And we just made soybeans and corn and all this, and then we gave them for 6 months, and then over 80% were really, they and their family became stable. And when Pascal did a presentation with his colleague, I added some of the things that they gave me and I had. And so it really improved them, but we could not continue because of funds, but this is really very, very important. And I'm really happy to hear more from Asma, and
Good.
I'm grateful for this day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rebecca. Dr. Saidu, you had your hand up also. Would you like to unmute and make a comment or ask something? I think he may be frozen. He may have lost his connection. Jude, do you want to unmute? And I see your hand up. We'd love to hear from you since you've been mobilizing the farmers of Liberia.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. You know, to me, to combine the three things at one is not easy. One, if there's hunger, survival of the fittest in some area, and at the same time, you want to introduce the nutrition program for the mothers. And I think this need long time program because we are now trying to get what we need now. And when you introduce the nutrition special to the mothers first, and I think it will be very heavy and tedious, except if there's a plan is being drawn to solve the survival of the general hunger, then to come to the nutrition area gradually. I think that is possible, but to combine them all together in some area, like our area in part of Nigeria, it's not possible. That's my comments.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, getting, I know my colleagues in the Hunger Project often need to train all kinds of teams of volunteers, some of them with a passion for nutrition, some with a passion for health, for WASH, for all those components that have to come together. Pascal, you've been leading big nutrition campaigns.
Yeah.
What do you have to say?
Yeah, thank you, John. I think when we look at nutrition, that is the basic need for all communities, no matter where, no matter the place. And if we look at the community, the nutrition and food security in link to environment and climate change, and if we look at nutrition and food security in link with local economic developments, and obviously with how we could improve the nutrition status of our whole community, I think we will look it on an holistic point of view that could make it really sustainable. That is one comment I would like to make. But one thing you have mentioned during your presentation, and I would like that we look at it carefully and share more in terms of practice to consolidate how we tackle that issue, is the nutrition during the first 1,000 days of their life. Many discussion, many theories, many learning from there, but in terms of practice, it seems like we are not doing much. When I talk from the MCLD perspective, we in Benin, let me get precise when I talk from that perspective. So in Benin, we have shared with communities, how we could value local recipes and local assets so that we could back up the efforts of the all communities in terms of our contribution to how we handle that situation at the community level. But we don't come to impose anything to communities, but they know what they are doing, what are available at the level, at the community level, what are the best recipes they would like to value. All those issues are really what we are discussing with communities in Benin, and I would say other countries in West Africa also are now interested. Thank you.
Yes. Great. Thank you, Pascal. Anyone else? If not.
Yes, thank you very much, Pastor Dr. John Conrad. This is Jude on the line. I don't know if you can hear me.
It's kind of breaking up a little, Jude, but maybe you could put your comments in the chat and we could read them out.
Hello?
Yes, your sound is breaking up, Jude, I'm afraid. Sorry. Okay. Well, then what I would like to do now is I would like to introduce a person who's very much an expert in all of this and who is recently shifted jobs to be part of the SDG2, the Zero Hungers Sustainable Development Goal advocacy platform. And so Asma, can I turn it over to you? You could unmute and greet everyone, and you could show your slides whenever you like and tell us what you're doing with the hub.
Thank you, John. And it's great to be here. Thanks very much for the invitation. As John mentioned, I recently joined the SDG2 Advocacy Hub about a year ago. My focus is on 2 of the 5 targets. SDG2 has 5 targets. One is ending hunger. The second is improving nutrition, so ending all forms of malnutrition. The third is livelihoods and productivity of smallholder farmers, doubling that by 2030. The fourth is agricultural sustainability, and the fifth is protecting biodiversity. So SDG2 tries to do a lot, but when the goal was adopted, it really was a comprehensive approach to the way we think about hunger, food security, and sustainability. So it's a really important opportunity, the SDG2, for really fixing our food systems. And last year when I joined the hub, I had, I came into the hub in a year that was really full of summits and opportunities on SDG2. Including the Food System Summit. We were, every country was having national dialogues and leading up to the summit. And then there was COP26 and the Nutrition for Growth Summit. So coming into my role, I was asking partners, and the hub is really a membership organization. It's initiative. It's really about fostering collaboration and coordination across the SDG2 space, so across all the different stakeholders who work on the different targets, creating a space for both information sharing, but also then coordinated action. So as I came into this role, I had various conversations trying to figure out, in this crowded year for SDG2, what would success look like for 2.3 and 2.4? And there was a real sense that smallholder farmers were getting lost in the discussions, that ever since SDG the SDGs were adopted in 2015, we've actually seen a rise in hunger. And that increase in hunger is predominantly in rural areas amongst the very people who produce our food. And so there was a sense that perhaps coming out of this year or coming out of this whole process, there was a need for a strong narrative that situates smallholder farmers as an integral part of the solution to many of the interconnected problems we face in our food systems. So John talked a lot about nutrition. What is the role that smallholder farmers can play on climate adaptation and mitigation? And then, of course, COVID-19, and now this food price crisis we find ourselves in really have illustrated how important local and regional food systems are to food security. And so that really sharpens the focus on smallholder farmers, because they are, and I think with climate change and the impacts of climate change, local is going to become even more important, both in terms of a mitigation perspective, but also in terms of an adaptation and resilience perspective. So we began to think about, how we could create this narrative and how we could get alignment across a broad set of stakeholders to really elevate the issues that smallholder farmers face and ensure that their voice and their perspectives are heard in these 8 years left to achieve SDG 2. The urgency, the urgency of achieving the 2030 goals, we're not going to achieve them, especially goal 1, if we don't invest in smallholder farmers. There's no way. So we have to do that. John mentioned my background in nutrition, and he talked about the Lancet series and how that really did lead to a change in the way the nutrition community was communicating and aligning. And so having, that in my background and in my head coming into this role, I was conscious that there was, new research that had been done that came out in 2020 called Series 2030 that really did what the Lancet series did for nutrition. It looked at 30 years of interventions in small-scale agriculture and picked out the 10 most impactful things that could be done using state-of-the-art research approaches to really identify those. And so we now have the evidence base. We've got lots of political statements through the CFS, the Community on Food Security, and we've got the Committee on World Food Security, and the outcomes of the Food Systems Summit last year and all the national dialogues. So what we decided to do was try and build a consensus based on all of the things that we do agree on. Obviously, I think somebody just put on in the chat that farmers often don't agree with each other. And there is a lot that we don't agree on. And there's a lot of areas where we need to do more work to find agreement. For example, around agroecological approaches versus biotechnology, there's a lot of disagreement. But with Series 2030 and the CFS documents, there's a lot that we do agree on. And so we wanted to build a consensus based on what we agree on, acknowledging that there was more work to be done. So that was the initial impetus. When I got started, I was quite ambitious and I thought, let's try and get this out, right after the Food Systems Summit. But I think the more that we got into the, talking to people. It was a very, we had several side events at the pre-summit, at the AGRF, at CFS last year to test whether this was a good idea to try and do this. So we had several side events. We had different panelists and engaged different groups. And basically people thought it was worth trying to do, worth trying to pull together a consensus. And then as we engaged people, people said, listen, you can't build a consensus with smallholders without actually meaningfully engaging smallholder farmers. And that, you know, we really took that to heart. It slowed things down a lot because last year, as I said, there was so much going on, and I think smallholder farmer organizations were being pulled into lots of processes, including the national dialogues, food systems dialogues, and at the global level at the summit. So it was really hard to get their attention and engagement. So we slowed things down. We started to build relationships with the World Farm Organization, with the Pan-African Farm Organization, with the East African Farm Organization. And in partnership with them, in February of this year, we held a dialogue with farm organizations. We ended up having about 70 organizations and individuals join the dialogue. We broke into breakout sessions around the 3 issue areas that Series 2030 focuses on, and I'll share that with you in a minute. And then we spent the next few weeks drafting based on that dialogue, drafting a consensus. We then circulated that consensus widely with farm organizations. PAFO sent it out, World Farmer sent it out, and we posted it on our website and got quite a bit of feedback that we then we really did change the document based quite considerably based on that feedback. And so I will share my screen and share a little bit with you about the consensus, and I'll also paste in the chat the link to the web page where you can sort of get some background as well as see the current draft and the link to sign on to it. At the moment, we have close to 70 signatories, both individuals and organizations. So let me see if I can bring up my screen. Can you all see that? So I, you know, as background, really framing it as farmers are at the heart of local and regional food systems, but they can be decisive in delivering healthy, nutritious foods, but they're being left behind. And this consensus is really an attempt to reinvigorate partnerships and coordinate efforts across stakeholders to stand with smallholder farmers and to be accountable for tangible results. So this is really the beginning of a conversation, this consensus. It's not by any means the end of anything. So as I said, it's based on Series 2030 that have had 3 components. One was about empowering the excluded. And most of the farmers that we think that are being left behind and are going hungry and are extremely poor are also not being supported by, they don't have the backing of farm organizations or cooperatives or abilities to work collectively. And the research really shows that farmers that are organized have a much better chance of improving their productivity, improving their livelihoods, sharing information and knowledge, and also they have more bargaining power in the marketplace. So, farm organizations, vocational training, and social protection, hugely important for success. The second pillar is really about what farmers need at the farm gate, on farms. So direct interventions, including inputs, finance, research and development that really speaks to their needs, context specific, and improved livestock feed and irrigation. And then in our dialogues, we also heard a lot more about, extension approaches that focus specifically on women, technologies, digital technologies that really support women farmers in particular. So you'll see that in the draft. And then the third pillar is really connecting farmers with markets. And so supporting the small and medium-sized enterprises that work with smallholder farmers, improving storage and infrastructure and digital tools that really support farmers in selling what they grow. And then in our conversations with farm organizations, the enabling environment and resilience came up a lot in the discussion. So the Series 2030 recommendations need to be part of a broader, situated within a broader set of good policies, strong research and data, good governance, political stability. All of those things matter. And then, having come into this from a nutrition perspective, I was struck by how segmented we are. I mean, the smallholder farmers themselves, most of them are women. Most of them are malnourished. They were malnourished from childhood. Their children are malnourished. And yet we don't think about their own health and well-being as an important input into their productivity and their livelihoods. And so the consensus tries to connect those dots. And so their own nutrition and the nutrition of the future generation of farmers, their children, is really equally important. So when we design programs for them, we really need to integrate nutrition very much into that. And this was a way of trying to get nutrition, the nutrition community and the agriculture community to really align in a way, because we've been, nutrition has been driven very much from a health perspective. And I think there's a lot that agriculture could do to think about the health and well-being of the farmers themselves, and align very much with the nutrition community. So within the SDG 2 space, connecting. So we have 8 calls to action, 8 years to 2030, 8 calls to action, 8 harvests, if you will, playing on that theme, grouped into power and priorities, financing, inclusive, meaningful, and accountable partnerships, and resilience. I won't read them all, but please do go to the link and have a look. The Series 2030 also costed out how much investment would be needed to move to advance those 3 pillars, empowering the excluded, on the farm, and food on the move, and came to 33 billion a year additional, of which donors would contribute 14 billion. And if you've been paying any attention to what's been happening in Ukraine or how the West mobilized to protect their own economies during COVID-19, you'll notice that this is a drop in the bucket of the financing that is possible. And so I think that this is an attempt, our consensus is an attempt to also really push governments and donors and the multilateral agencies to focus on these particular pieces. So I will stop sharing my screen there and really look forward to your feedback, your advice, your guidance, and your questions. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Asma. Who has a question, comment? Anyone? Please, there are a lot of things in the chat that I...
Nicola has a comment or question.
Oh, hi, Nicola. Yes, please.
Hi there. Well, first of all, Asma, that was terrific. Thank you. I think this is really important work, and it's bringing together threads that need to be brought together. I do want to make two comments, one on the financing, and I think this one won't surprise you, Asma, and that is because public funding is channeled so much through development financing institutions, there's an opportunity or perhaps a need to focus on them and on the way that they work. And so for the rest of those attending, I used to manage the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, housed in the World Bank, multi-stakeholder partnership, delivering large-scale funding, or at least intended to deliver large-scale funding. And we fought really hard during the time that I was there to increase the funding that was being channeled more directly, and I use those words very specifically, more directly to smallholders, because we were not able to channel the funds directly to smallholders. And so I think that there is a real challenge in the 8 years, especially front loading in those 8 years, to change mindsets, to change ways of working so that the funding does get channeled directly to smallholders in ways that are completely demand driven, so that it's not those institutions coming in with their favorite pet projects and saying, oh, look, we've got our favorite smallholders here to work with, but really flipping the model around. So that's one. And two, since I'm now with the Safe Seaweed Coalition, did want to really encourage that thinking, as you've been doing, Asma, that integrated thinking, and this time integrating across land and sea, and incorporating seaweed into diets and seeing what kinds of changes can be made. Just want to share one tiny example and then I will stop speaking. And with apologies, I'm going to have to leave at 11, and this is really too bad because this is great, but I have another meeting to go to. In Madagascar, famine hit Madagascar. There is an NGO called Feedback Madagascar that is working directly. It's Malgache, and they are working directly with the mothers to increase, to help their starving children by putting seaweed powder into the school meals that the kids are receiving, to help to provide some nutrition supplements. So it is a nutrition specific intervention that I'm crossing my fingers will be helpful. It is wonderful to join this group. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to further conversations. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicola.
Very cool. Just one quick, well, 2 quick points. The program that Nicola led was born out of the last food price crisis. And it is a good moment to actually, now that we're in another one, to really rethink. And I really look forward to working with you, Nicola, to think about how we should push and what we should be pushing for, because that program needs to be really doubled in budget, and then also, as you say, reach farm organizations directly. On the the land and sea piece, we use the definition of small scale food producers that was in SDG 2. So that does include fisher folk, and yeah, so we should, it doesn't come out quite as much in the draft, but yeah, we should be mindful of how, of that piece. And one thing I forgot to say, and you reminded me, you know, this is a global call to action, and it, you know, it reflects conversations across continents. But you'll see in the section on the call to action, we are encouraging people to take it and build on it, to have national and regional level conversations, and then add in calls to action that are relevant for your national context. And so, for example, in a coastal country where fisher folk, you know, those issues come up, they could have specific calls to action geared to their government that would reflect their priorities. So I think, you know, this is a starting point, as I said, and it could, you know, I love your ideas of how we could, you know, foster those conversations. It's only me at the hub, so I have limited capacity, but, you know, this is a unbranded tool that you know, could be used by national alliances, national community-led, you know, development partners, you know, to have those conversations at the national level. You know, the CADIP biennial review just came out, and one country is on track and to achieve the Malabo commitments. One country out of 40, and you know, there are 43 indicators that cross agriculture and nutrition. And so there's a lot of room to push governments as well, and to nationalize it and create regional calls to action as well, and use those, you know, things. I see Dr. Dali has her hand up as well, so I'll stop there.
Yes, thank you very much for this amazing presentation. When you are discussing this food security and nutrition and all this, my mind went to my country, Nigeria, and some of the big donor agencies that the money is given to them to help the people. During in 2015 and 2016, we were sub-granted by one organization who received IRC, who received grant from USAID for food. And my organization had the opportunity to profile people and feed people. And also we have a partnership with Christian AIDS. Mm-hmm. So from that 2 years, we feed almost 1 million people with less than $2 million. Wow. But the government, even if they are given money, they will not, the people will not get it. Just recently, our accountant general embezzled 80 billion naira, he himself and his family, while the university they are on strike many months, and he refused to approve for the university 1.8 billion. And he introduced one salary something that duped the university lecturers and all this. 80 billion for one person. And where did the money come from? It come from the UN, all these big countries that supported Nigeria, and they have all this project on paper, and then this G8 and all this help Nigeria, but then they embezzle and put it in their pockets. So it's very, very pathetic. And yes. This big organization, they will not give us with those given to the people directly in the community, but they will give to the squanderers and the dupers. So it's really very, very unfortunate.
Yeah. So this is, I appreciate both your passion and appropriate anger about that, Dr. Rebecca. When Asma agreed to join us, I realized that one of our big strategic pushes in the chapter strategies is to get our chapters organized well enough that they can actually be able to help get funds directly to community level groups, farmers associations, such as the one that Jude has been building in Liberia and other organizations, because in your call to action, Asma, having facilities through which funds can directly reach small scale farmers and their associations is just a crucial breakthrough that we have to achieve, and fast. So that is a big priority, I know, with a lot of the national chapters, is to just build up their own capacity to be able to manage, report on, share accountably funds directly to community level action, collective action by small scale farmers. So it's, and I know that USAID and others are wanting to go that direction, and yet, the big organizations, as Dr. Rebecca just pointed out, being able to ensure that the wealth of this world, which is enormous, can translate into reaching the hands of those who will put it to good use. So I don't know if anybody has any other news on this progress. Isabel, your hand is up. Why don't you go ahead and unmute?
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
I was just at World Accord, so I work with World Accord, and we are part of the Food Security Policy Group. And there's been a lot of, we have an expert who's called Timothy Wise, and has done a lot of studies on AGRA, the African Revolution, the Green Revolution, and how it's impoverishing farmers and all, but it's also being financed by Bill Gates, and Canadian government, like Global Affairs Canada and all. So I don't know if it makes sense to share this here or now, but I'm also wondering, like how the donors are contributing to impoverished smallholder farmers. And this is West Africa, this initiative, AGRA. I don't know if you've heard about it or, so it's quite interesting also, because it's hard for when I see like our partners are doing agroecology, how it is difficult to prove to even the Canadian government what is the worth of agroecology, instead of the Monsantos and big companies and corporations of the world. Like they're really not listening, even if they have like the Feminist International Assistance Policy, and it is shown that they are through agroecology empowerment of women and girls. And anyways, it's just the research or whatever, the science that they want behind the work that we are doing. They are never, it's hard to demonstrate for them to accept the work that we're doing advocacy on. So maybe, I just find it interesting, and yeah, I know.
Yep. Thanks, Isabel. And there's certainly a lot of evidence on our side of the scale. You know, it's people may not be listening to it, but being able to just, you know, when we were asked at the Hunger Project to do the sort of the literature review on where's the evidence for the importance of community-led action for all 26 of those things in the Lancet study, and there was now plenty of it. So the evidence is there. We need to stand up, get loud, work together, and support, because most, as Asma said, most of the hungry people in our world are food farmers or food producers of some kind or other. And this is just, as Asma said, unacceptable that we can't get our systems organized to actually be in support of them, the people that feed our planet.
I think on the agroecology piece, the consensus was really about focusing on the issues where there is broad agreement, and we wanted to place the focus on smallholders themselves, and so we didn't use that. We didn't get into that debate in this document. I do feel like at the national level, if this is, domesticated in a way, those issues can absolutely come up, because, there will be clear evidence from work that's being done at the national level and everything. So, I think there's nothing to preclude issues around agroecology to coming up in those national level conversations and calls to action. I will say, I think the Food System Summit has created much more space for the agroecology conversation. I think it is moving, even, so there is an opening, and I think we should just, at the end of the day, it's smallholder farmers who really need to decide what's in their own best interest for them, what they're growing and what works in their context. And it's really about them having the information and the power within to make the decisions. And so that's sort of where we focused our energy in the document. I think this crisis we're in right now, where fertilizer, and I think Béranger mentioned this in the chat, that, with fertilizer prices so high, I think there's a short-term and a long-term strategy here. I mean, on the short term, I think farmers will need fertilizer to be able to make sure that they have the best crop possible this year. We can't afford failure of any crops this year, given the situation. But I think there is an opening now, because what this crisis has revealed is so much dependence on very few countries, very few commodities, very few inputs. The fact that, we're dependent on two countries for so much of the fertilizer production and a few chemicals. I think there's an opening now because of what this crisis is revealing about the vulnerabilities in our food system. There's an opening to have these conversations and to push governments to think more broadly. And
Very
even
good.
on the product, so diversification of production, diversification of diets, and diversification of inputs. I think there's a room for pushing.
Good. So we're going to do lots of pushing. That's why we're the Shift the Power movement. I'm going to wrap this conversation for now, but we'll be sending out the links in the email newsletter to everyone. And I will also include a link back to our own community-led food systems inputs, because I do think all of this needs to come together, and our national chapters are in unique positions to play an important role in this. And if there is information, ammunition that we can use for our advocacy, we will get it to everyone. I'm going to jump back for a moment to my slides here. Let's see, Chrome tab, do not do the audio. Okay. No. There we are, okay. So one of the things that's going on a lot, and I mentioned earlier, is that the localization and decolonizing development issues have become very important. Gunjan, do you want to introduce this topic? Because this is the last day for us to push in a particular direction. So Gunjan?
Thank you. So there's been a lot of talk, and we in the movement have been talking about, two parts to it. As John said initially, decolonizing and community-led development are not the same. And yet there is a lot of interconnections between the two, right? And so one of the things that we have been doing is been pushing for decolonizing, not just the sector in particular, but evaluation specifically, because there are serious issues with the way we do monitoring and evaluation, and with the way we think about research. What do we consider to be, research? What do we consider to be evidence? Whose value systems and, who determines what rigor is? So in a step in this direction, a few things have been happening. We joined hands with Interaction. We held a session, a series actually, on decolonizing evaluations. And there is a journal called the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation, which is bringing out a special issue on decolonizing evaluation. Now, these editors for this special issue are two wonderful people, but notably Professor Bagel Chalisa, who is from the University of Botswana and has been leading this Made in Africa evaluation, which basically says that we need to, typically evaluation frameworks that we know don't consider the relational aspect of things. And that is so central and integral to what we do. And that is the Made in Africa relational framework of evaluation. So they have agreed that for this special issue, because we are talking of decolonizing evaluation, we are not going to generate knowledge the usual traditional way. And so what we are doing is we are creating a mural, which is a mural of commitments, because we believe that decolonizing evaluation requires every person to step up, just like decolonizing development requires. Each one of us, it doesn't matter where we sit, INGO, development partner, CBO, government. It doesn't matter where we are, in the majority world or in the global north. All of us have a role to play in this. So what we put together was a mural of commitments. What is your commitment, either personally or organizationally, to decolonize evaluation in this year? And so we sent out an email around this. We've got some phenomenal responses. So thank you to everybody whose organizations or who as individuals have put in their commitments to, to decolonizing evaluation. And if you haven't, this is your chance to do it. It is a fantastic way to create and start conversations within your own organizations on what this would entail, and to make it public, to kind of hold ourselves to that commitment and to really walk the talk. So please, if you haven't participated, please consider participating in it, and please share the links. If you are not a monitoring and evaluation or research and learning professional, and you have somebody in your organization who is, please share the link with them. I will also put it into the chat box. And the final thing is, in the spirit of decolonizing and in the spirit of accessibility, you do not have to send your responses in English. The responses can be in any language, not just English, French, Spanish. It can be in Swahili, it can be in Luganda, it can be in any language, in Hindi. We will translate and put the translations alongside it, but you should feel free to send your responses in any language, and they can also be pictures, not necessarily words. Thank you, John. And if you have
Great,
questions, reach out to me.
Yes, so you'll put the, in fact, Marion had a question. What is decolonization? Which I mentioned earlier. If you go to mcld.org, you'll see in the featured stories something called Coming to Terms, with a very clear and concise definition of each of these terms. And we want to promote people using these terms accurately. So you can learn all about decolonization right there on mcld.org website. And then Gunjan has put the link to that mural to record your commitments on shifting the power in the space of evaluation, which would be great to do. Okay, let me go to some upcoming events. We have a few minutes left for our call. And Gunjan, if all works well and if the visas come through, Gunjan's going to be leading some sessions at the European Evaluation Society. Do you want to mention those, Gunjan?
Sure. So the MCLD team, 3 of us, I alongside with a colleague from the collaborative research team from PACT, Molly Wright, and Trisha from Malawi is actually going to be at the European Evaluation Society representing our work. And we are doing 3 sessions. We have been invited to do a professional development workshop. It's a full-day workshop on community-led monitoring and evaluation principles and tools. So this includes the 5-hour session that many people here on the call have actually done on our participatory CLD assessment tool, and an additional 2 hours on community-led monitoring and evaluation. So we're doing a full-day session on that. And then we have 2 panels. We have a panel introducing the 2 tools, the participatory CLD assessment tool and the CLD evaluation tool on June 8th, which really talks about how do you center community voices in evaluative practice, which is the only way towards equity-oriented evaluations, which is the new thing in monitoring and evaluation. And the second session is actually on illuminating the practice of community-led development. Do we practice what we teach? This is based on the 173 program, 65 country study that MCLD had done, the collaborative research team, and that we had released last year. We are going to be presenting the findings from that and what we have learned about the way organizations are thinking about and doing CLD. So if you are, or if anybody you know from your organization or others is at the European Evaluation Society conference in Copenhagen this June, please ask them to attend and to be a part of these conversations.
Great, Gunjan. Okay, so also coming up, as usual, on the very last day in the same time slot, the last Wednesday of June, we'll be having our monthly call. We will, part of that call will be devoted to preparing for the high-level political forum at the United Nations, which happens in the first half of July. It will be focusing on SDGs 4, education, 5, gender equality, 14, life on land, 15, life in the sea, and 17, partnerships for the goals. So these are all very near and dear to the subject of today's call, but we will be preparing, and hopefully you all have found voice with your own country delegations to have some influence at the UN on this July. And also, it's not fully scheduled yet, Anne, unless it is, but there has been great demand for a whole course, many workshops on domestic resource mobilization, hosted by Change the Game Academy. That will be coming up also. Watch your emails to announce that. Is there anything you want to say about that, Anne?
Yeah, I just got off a call. We're really excited about it. Speaking of decolonization, spending a lot of time competing for international funds that you don't often actually successfully get, and also you're meeting someone else's agenda, and the funds can be quite small compared to the project they're coming from.
Right.
We have found that that doesn't really work out very well. And so the idea is that this Change the Game Academy has been around for many, many years. It's about domestic resource mobilization, sustainable, localized, and nationalized resource mobilization that is not about, you know, trying to spend a lot of time raise funds that are not sustainable and are also not in the spirit of community-led development. So there's going to be 6 sessions. It's going to start in the middle of June. It's going to be led by Sharon Olang, who is from Kenya. She will be leading it from Kenya. She has so much experience working with domestic groups that that have successfully shifted their fundraising approach and their resource mobilization approach to domestic resource mobilization. And this is exclusive content specially developed for the national chapters and the civil society leaders that participate in the movement for community-led development. It's going to be participatory, practical, following along in the what we've already started with the network weaving course. And everyone is welcome to join. If you are hearing my voice right now, we would love to have you in that class. So we're going to start it out. We're going to send out some information so you can learn more about it. And you can sign up and just come to the first class and see what you think. And then if you're interested, you can continue to work through all the classes. And we will, if you sign up, we will make the recordings available to you for a limited amount of time. So even if you miss one of the classes, one of the webinars, you can get access to the recording. But that's just going to be for the people that signed up because it's customized material with a certain shelf life, shall we say. Great. So for more information about that, and we're really excited about it and excited to work with Change the Game Academy.
Thanks, Anne. And listen, thanks to Change the Game Academy. I know we've engaged, a lot of us have engaged with them in the past. They're really great. So we are at the end of this call almost. If there's anybody that has anything that they want to bring up for the good of the whole movement, this would be the time. Anything from anyone? If not, then I can return 11 minutes of your day. So thank you all for joining us. If you missed any of this or any of your colleagues missed it, we'll be getting the recording up on the website very, very soon. It's just wonderful to be with everyone. I particularly want to thank Asma and all the work she has done to pull together the consensus on some of the most important people in our world, the small-scale food farmers that feed our world, nearly all of whom are women. So thank you all, and let's go fix this planet while the sun is shining on community-led development. Let's use every opportunity that's in front of us. So thank you all for all of your work and all of your passion that you bring to this. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mr. Pascal.
Everybody.
Thank you.